Welcome to your readings for the week. Week ending March 21st, which is officially the first day of spring. I swear I haven't been drinking. 20th is the equinox. Here in California, feels like we had our winter and spring together, and we're moving straight on into summer. So for 2 seasons. So that's gonna be fun. What we got going on? Also, St. Patty's Day this week. Not a fan necessarily, because of course the meaning behind it is very gruesome, and not at all about pretending to be Irish and getting drunk at all. But you know, que sera. I won't get into that too much. What do we have going on here? Pretty light week. Mercury's retrograde ends this week. We do still have a shadow period for another week or so, but let me see here, by the end of the week. So I do believe it ends on Friday, the 20th, on solstice day, and so is in full direct motion by Saturday. So one more week of a shadow period. This has been kind of a weird one. It seemed to be sort of uh, not that big of a deal. At least I didn't feel that it was really a big deal. Noticing little things, phone issues, computer issues every now and then, things that just don't really make sense why they're not working. Obviously, we had a microphone issue a few weeks back. But one thing that somebody mentioned to me, which was kind of like a light bulb moment, I guess, was I've been really exhausted lately. And of course, there's a lot going on. So that would make sense. And I was talking with a client, I think it was somebody on this list actually, about yeah, this retrograde is kicking my butt because I'm just so exhausted all the time. And I kind of had a chuckle because every Pisces that I've ever known really loves their couch time. I mean, as many hours as they can get laying on that couch, napping, watching TV, what have you. And I just sort of threw my head back and laughed. And I thought, well, no wonder I'm so tired, because it's Pisces time. And if you look at the zodiac, Pisces is the end of the road. It's the very last sign. And then we move into the spring signs, which it starts all over again in Aries. So, which of course we're going to be doing at the end of this week also. So, if you have been feeling overly just dragging your behind, maybe that's why is Mercury's forcing us into that couch time, which is, to be honest with you, something I don't do very often, but I definitely have been doing a lot more of that the last couple of weeks. Anywho, we're going to get started, and we're going to start with Darcy. And let me see. Uranus still 28 degrees in Taurus, so this week not leaving yet. Probably a few more weeks. Considering we were 28 degrees last week, and I do believe the week before. So yeah, we got a few more weeks. I know it can feel like you're just crawling to the end of something. And then when it's over, and we can move on from that, because of course it will not be coming back into Taurus again. Focus continues to be on triggers, and Uranus continues to focus his energy on triggers. But Uranus continues to be in a grand sextile with the Sun, Neptune, Saturn, Pluto, and at the very beginning, the Moon moves into this as well, because the Moon moves into conjunction with Pluto. Pluto's focus, where it is on money, finding power in money. That's a new concept, isn't it? The Sun Neptune, Saturn, all focused on career. And of course, Uranus is bringing up triggers there. So this is kind of a not much has changed, right? It's pretty much staying the same for the most part. But I kind of feel like the word wrapping things up is coming up, and I feel like this week sort of feels like you're wrapping things up in terms of decisions around your job, decisions, major decisions around money, things like that. All of those triggers coming up, they can be really helpful, believe it or not. They don't always have to be the worst thing in the world. Sometimes bringing up things that are triggering to you are a very valuable lesson. Because a lot of times I think when we're triggered, we just react to it. We're not learning from it per se. And so when we're just reacting to it, we keep doing the same thing over and over again. When we understand where the trigger comes from, that's when we have the power to make a different choice rather than allowing a reaction to make the choice, which sort of turns the tables on the trigger a little bit, makes it a little bit less important. Doesn't mean that it goes away completely, but I kind of feel like, oh, I'm so sorry. You're missing my couch already. Um, I kind of feel like it's giving the trigger a different importance, if that makes sense. It's lessening the importance of it. So it's still comes on strong, but maybe not as strong as it did before, if that makes sense. And because you have a system down, you're not as likely also to just react to the trigger. This has actually been something that's been coming up around me a lot lately, having to take care of my mother who brings up a lot of triggers. There's a lot of 49 years of triggers there and issues. And it's I'm noticing more and more, being that forced to be in that situation where I'm constantly triggered, just how often it just makes me mad, and my reaction is always in anger, and I have to stop myself and say, that was then and this is now, and now the trigger doesn't matter because this is what we're dealing with here. And so it takes me a few seconds, literally a few seconds, but I have to stop myself from getting angry, and then I look at it, I separate then from now and look at what needs to be done right now and how to approach that in a way that's less aggressive than it could be, because it could be very aggressive. And in the past, it has been, to be honest. Now, when we get towards the end of the week, the moon comes into Taurus on Friday, and we're going to have a Friday and Saturday Taurus moon. And the moon's influence is very much on those that support you. Now, as the moon comes into your sign late on Friday, the moon is in a square with Jupiter. Jupiter's focus is on self, and very specifically growth of self. And it's these emotions a lot of times I think that gets in the way, but also a very common problem that I think a lot of people have, which is that we are, I'm growing, this is my personal journey, and this person over here is going to help me with it. And then of course they completely drop the ball and they're not there and they don't help you with it, and it sort of stunts your growth because you were relying on this person, and of course they didn't come through. This also happens all the time. But I think that what's really important here in this lesson is that personal growth is exactly that. It's personal. No one's going to understand where you're coming from, where you have come from, where you're going. They didn't walk in your shoes. And they did not live those moments with you in the same way. And therefore, they're not going to put the same amount of importance into it that you are putting into it. And this happens within relationships a lot, actually, because you would think, I mean, I've been with David for 30 years. You would think he would understand by now, that he would know every single aspect of my journey. The truth is, he doesn't. It's not his journey, so he wasn't paying attention to it. He didn't commit it to memory. There are obviously some things that he does remember, but every single little tidbit that got me to where I am today, absolutely not. He doesn't know and he doesn't understand, and quite frankly, cannot relate to much of it, because if you think about it, I've lived this life as a woman, and living this life as a woman is very different than living this life as a man. They get different things that we don't get. We have to deal with things that they would never deal with. So I can't necessarily rely on him for support in that. He can be understanding. He can say, okay, I know you're going through something here. Let me make dinner for you. But other than, but really helping me learn this lesson, not necessarily, unless spiritually he plays a part in it, in which he will just do the things he's supposed to do without realizing that he's supposed to do them in order for me to learn this lesson. And usually in that case, it's not necessarily like pretty and flowy, and here we are running through a field of wildflowers holding hands doing it. It's usually pretty aggressive, and we're fighting with each other, and here I am trying to learn to make different choices because the same choices aren't working anymore. The moon moves closer into, I don't actually think so. No, 7 degrees Taurus. So the moon does move into a square with Pluto on Saturday. And this, again, brings someone who's supposedly there to support you in direct conflict with money. So again, this is I'm relying on somebody and they're kind of dropping the ball in this particular realm or this particular area, which is also extremely frustrating. So 2 things. One, I've learned, obviously, never count your chickens before they're hatched. If this is one of those situations where somebody owed you money, you really need money, they say they're going to give it to you at the end of the week when I get paid, no problems, no worries, this and that and the other thing. And then, of course, they show up and they're like, well, I didn't get paid enough, and so I don't really have your money. And you're counting on that money for something, to pay a bill or something like that. That's very, very frustrating. So, and of course, it's definitely going to create an emotional experience. If this is something that happens all the time with this person, obviously, I would not be lending them any more money. But I also feel like this may be one of those instances, and I'm kind of seeing the guy with the kids who never feeds the kids around this issue. And the biggest thing is that I kind of feel like sometimes when he drops the ball, you're making it up. So that the landlady doesn't have to be shorted, and you're shorting yourself because of this person. And the truth of the matter is that when you're playing a very dangerous game, because first of all, she's not reprimanding him for what he's doing because she doesn't need to, because you go ahead and you take care of it for her. And there's going to come a time when you can't take care of it for her. And you're actually the one that's going to be reprimanded instead of him. Very dangerous game indeed. So if you are doing that, please stop. Okay. For yourself, for her, and for him. I've got strength in reverse this week for you. And strength in reverse, it basically is lack of strength. This could mean illness. This could mean that you're just plumb worn out. We are in the shadow period of this retrograde coming up this week. So that could be wearing you out as well. That definitely does happen from time to time. Extra self-care is important. If you need to rest, do so as much as you can. Trying not to push yourself, just to push yourself, if that makes sense. The more you push yourself when you have, when your strength is low, the more you are putting yourself at risk of getting sick. So that's what I have for you. Make sure you take care. Emergency. I love emergency. It works really, really well. So yes, that's what I have for you. Moving on to Jeannette. We still have no planets in Gemini because Uranus is still only 28 degrees in Taurus, which means not quite there. It's very close to being on the cusp, but not quite there yet. In a week or two, I would imagine. And the moon doesn't quite come into Gemini yet this week either. So there really isn't any planets. And we're looking at kind of a space where you're sort of in between focuses. So the sign isn't really focused on anything in particular, which is nice. You have sort of a week of let me figure out what I want to focus my time on. And I understand that you're the lady that you're babysitting for is not needing you so much either. So that clears up some time as well. And I think that intellectuals, we really should do this more often, and we don't, is check-ins. Because we're so busy having these brilliant ideas, and we're so busy moving and doing this and hopping from, one thing to another all over and over again. And with that being said, we never really check our progress, and I think that this week is actually a really good time for that. I think one of the reasons we avoid checking our progress is because we don't want to see just how far we haven't got when it feels like we should have gotten farther, because we're always busy. We're always doing something. We're always moving. We're always working. But, being busy doesn't necessarily mean that you're accomplishing anything either. So checkpoints are good, and they're very, very necessary, because without checkpoints, we don't really get to check where we're at. And if we don't check where we're at, the chances of us meeting our goals, our goal deadlines, are not very good. So this is definitely a good week to do that. The other thing that is kind of sort of popping up for you right now is I feel like you guys have been going and going and going and moving back and moving out and moving here, and Mario's starting a new job. So that kind of takes some of the weight off of things as well. And you can start to plan. And I feel like this is a good time to rest for both of you. I think that taking the time together to just breathe, you don't have to have a ton of money to do it. You don't have to go anywhere. It's just spending the time together, because he's going to be traveling pretty soon. It won't be long before you find something to dig your hands into. And while you have this time, of course, you're getting prepared for him to eventually go to California and start working. But now it's just a good time to be together, to get your house in order, to relax, to enjoy your time together. Um, Maybe bump around Vegas and just see what kind of trouble you can get into one night. You know, nothing fancy, nothing big. Just, you don't have to come up with big, huge ideas either. Drive over the Hoover Dam. Well, if you can afford the gas. Drive over the Hoover Dam and back. Something. I think that in relationships, it's really important to check in every now and then. That's hard for everybody. It's hard for me, where my husband and I constantly go, 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 go. A lot of times our quote unquote check-in times are at inappropriate times for me, or inappropriate times for him. And so it's very important that you make those times, and that you make them count, even if it's just laying on the couch and watching TV and saying, hey, you know what, we this TV show that we want to binge watch, let's do it. It's just together time. It's just relaxed time. And you want to take this relaxation time now while you have it, because in a few weeks, you won't have it. So jump on it while you can. The card that I'm pulling for you is the Five of Cups. One of the things that I find interesting about this card is three of the cups have fallen over and the water has spilled out of them. And he's sort of nonchalant about it, because I feel like it's really not that big of a deal. A lot of people would freak out over something like this, but for him, he can just literally pick him up, refill him with water. There's a creek right there. It's really not that big of a deal. The Five of Cups in this position indicates hope for the future and learn valuable lessons from the past. Like, don't put the cups on rocks because they're going to fall over or something like that. So again, it's just all about relaxing, checking where you've been, preparing for where you're about to go. So that's what I have for you. Moving on to Dimitra, where it is all about you this week, because of course we are focused on self, and we still have Jupiter. Jupiter is direct, so Jupiter is expanding that growth, that personal growth, that professional growth, even financial growth. All of that growth is happening right now. And while that's an exciting thing, that can be a very overwhelming thing at the same time. And usually it is. But at the same time, I really feel like couple of different things here. One, you don't want to burn yourself out. Because life is exciting and there's just so many things going on, and you've got so many opportunities coming up, that there comes a point where it can feel like it is consuming you and becoming very, very overwhelming. So you want to make sure that you are meditating every day, a meditation bath every day, or at least every other day, that you're taking time to focus on what's right in front of you, as well as all of the other aspects as well. It can get really overwhelming, but I think the problem is not that we humans can't deal with it being overwhelming. It's that when it gets too overwhelming, we shut down. And it's the amount of time that we shut down that becomes the problem while we sit in that fear space. And while I don't see that as being a thing necessarily for you, it could very well be a thing. So I think, as usual, some days are better than others. Some days you've got energy and it's just like, whew, and it's up here and you're excited. And then when it starts to get difficult, the energy starts to come down, and that's when the overwhelmingness starts to kind of kick in a little bit. Jupiter is in a trine with Mars and Mercury. Mercury is retrograde right up until the very end of the week on Saturday. This placement allows you to utilize that Mercury retrograde to your advantage because, of course, Mercury and Mars are focused on long-term career goals here. So we're putting a lot of energy into that with Mars, obviously coming up with a lot of brilliant ideas as well. And I think that in terms of using Mercury's retrograde in your favor, I think that less talk and more action is really what that's about. So that's really a good thing, actually, because instead of thinking about it and having all these ideas and not doing anything, you're actually out there pounding the pavement looking for the next big thing, if that makes sense, which is good. Now, Jupiter is in a square with, let's see here, I do believe it's Venus. Yes, Jupiter is in a square with Venus. Venus is focused on those that support you. And unfortunately, the issue with that is that usually Venus represents a female in this particular instance. And this is somebody who has proclaimed support and seems to have reneged on their profession of support. So 1 minute, yes, they're all there, they're behind you, they're going to do all these things for you. And the next minute, all of a sudden, it turns out that they're not. So that's kind of a bummer. But if you look at the other aspect with Jupiter, here's Lonnie, with Jupiter and in a trine with Mercury and Mars, it doesn't matter. That's just one option that's not 100% working out. There are other options at work here. So again, plenty of opportunities. If you lose one, it's not going to be the end of the world. And right at the end of the week on Friday, the moon sort of moves into a square with Jupiter as well, in that support system. So I think that this is where that issue is going to be really emotional for you or create an emotional reaction. But I think that's the emotional reaction that says, I'm done dealing with this and I'm moving on, because it does feel like this person is making a lot of excuses, but not really saying they can't do it, if that makes sense. So it's, I think that it's less that it's happening and more about your previous feelings about a situation like this that are the challenge here. So take some time to shake it off, take some time to work through it, take some time to let her go so that you can move on and focus on all of the other opportunities that are there in front of you. And we have the Ten of Pentacles in reverse, which is kind of a bummer because the Ten of Pentacles in reverse is, with the Ten of Pentacles, everything is happy family, security, you've got money, everything is great. The Ten of Pentacles in this position indicates trouble with property or inheritance. So that does definitely bring up a money situation. And this could be part of the underlying panic and part of that underlying emotional response as well. But here's something that I told my husband. When you're looking at, I need a specific amount of money to pay my rent and all my bills and have food, and that's a lot. But if you look at the one at a time, it makes it a little bit easier. Oh, I just got to come up with $150 for this PG&E bill really quick. Not a problem. Let me just go and do, right? And you just look at the strengths and the things that you can do to make that money kind of quickly, if that makes sense. And it makes it a lot easier when you're focusing on a much smaller amount. So that's what I have for you. I'm going to take a little break and I will be right back. Okay, moving on to Connie, still focused on ideas and the mind this week. No planet in Leo. at all. The mind is a funny thing. We could be coming up with ideas, or we could be torturing ourselves with things and memories and things like that. And usually, when it's the latter, it really gets in the way of anything being good. Um, Unfortunately, so we did talk about that a little bit yesterday, and therefore this week, that really should be your focus for this week is to remind yourself, come up with a solution, a situation, um, a way for you to identify when it's happening and release it, because it's really, really important. I think a lot of us are, we sort of torture ourselves, and the way that the brain works with that torture is really chaotic. I mean, I remember something really, really stupid, okay, and this might be kind of funny actually. It was so embarrassing to me, and I thought about it and tortured myself over it for years, right? And it was just a slip of the tongue. I was in college, and it was a new semester, and I was, traveling with pretty much the same people. One of which, this girl was just nasty. She's nasty all the time. And so we had to go around, brand new class. We had to introduce ourselves. And I was pregnant with my second boy at the time. And so I stood up and I introduced myself and said that I was pregnant and that, all I did was eat. And what I meant to say was, and I would out eat anybody in this room, because that's all I was doing at the time. I was constantly eating with this kid. I mean, he was always hungry. Instead, I stood there in front of everybody and I said, and I will eat you all out. In a room full of women, and I will eat you all out. And then it didn't dawn on me until, I don't know, maybe close to the end of class, when I realized what I said. And I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I said that. Oh my God. And I mean, years later, this came up, and I was just like, oh, it was so embarrassing. And I just could not let it go. I couldn't, I mean, I didn't see any of those people. None of them mattered. None of them. I didn't care about anybody. I didn't, I wasn't even in school anymore. And I'm still obsessing over this one embarrassing, stupid thing that I said, which we do that a lot. Okay. So, but it was my mind. It kept coming up and torturing me and coming up and torturing me and coming up and torturing me. There's other things too that still have that effect on me. Like, one time, this was a horrible, but I walked out on my balcony and I told my kid, my youngest kid, because the BART station was next door and the trains were there and he loved trains. I said, I do not want to see you climbing up on chairs on this balcony to see the train without somebody here. And that there was that one time that he didn't listen. And I just happened to walk into the living room and see this kid teetering on the ledge of the balcony, arms and legs flailing like he was just going to go over. And of course, I ran out there, yanked him by the back of the shirt, pulled him in, swatted his little bottom, because obviously he didn't do what he said he was going to do. But again, to this day, I'm tortured by the thought of what would happen, of course, if I wasn't there, if I didn't, if he had fallen, this and that and the other thing, right? It still tortures me to this day. Okay. The point is that there's nothing there to torture me anymore but a memory, but a single thing that may or may not, might have, in the first case, it did happen. Got to move on from it. In the second case, it didn't happen. But the what if is so terrifyingly scary that, of course, I have to keep torturing myself. The point is, there comes a point when I have to say to my brain, stop it. I can't live through the thoughts that you're giving me anymore of my kid falling off the thing and finding him, or what have you, because I have a life to live and I have responsibilities. And I think that a lot of the time this comes up around times where I'm very stressed about my current responsibilities. And so this is my brain's way of saying, okay, well, here's a break. Let's obsess over this instead. No, that doesn't work. But in retrospect, it's actually easier to deal with my current responsibilities than to continue to listen to the what if my kid had fallen off the balcony story that my brain is constantly telling me. So in some cases, that is a good thing, depending on how you look at it. So I feel like this week, what's important is to come up with a system. My system is, we'll go back to the cases, the kid in the balcony. My system is to tell my brain, didn't happen. And I'm not going to think about that anymore. I am not going to torture myself over that anymore. And then I move on to something else. Usually this comes up when I'm trying to sleep. So my solution to that is to ground and bubble. For me, grounding and bubbling, right to sleep. So I ground and bubble. If it's during the day, I physically do something. I can't think about that right now. I'm focusing on folding this laundry, or I'm focusing on cleaning the kitchen, or I'm focusing on organizing this mess over here, what have you. It's the act of doing something, even though the thoughts can still go in your brain. Um, the act of doing something helps you focus on what your hands are doing, and then what's going on your brain becomes less of a burden, if that makes any sense at all. The main thing is obsessing, the potential to obsess over screwing up with Kailin, okay, and having that conversation. That's going to drive you batty. The more it drives you batty, the more you're going to want to try and fix it. And the more you try and fix it, the more you wind up in many cases making the problem worse. And you don't want to do that either. So leave it as it is. Just leave it for now. If you can find some time to have him come out there, that's great. But outside of that, don't reach out to try and fix this problem. Just let it be what it is, And, I think that one thing that you can do with him is to just send him a little message and let him know you're always there for him in case he needs anything. You're always there to listen if he's going through rough times. You're always there for whatever it is, that he needs, because you're his grandma, and grandmas are the best. I have pulled the Four of Cups for you today, and the Four of Cups in this position indicates disappointment or unrecognized opportunity. So here's something interesting. When you're mentally focused on something you can't fix, you can't change, it is what it is, you do miss opportunities that were potentially right in front of you that you weren't paying attention to because you were so focused on something else. So of course, you don't want to create that problem, especially when it comes to work, because you want to be successful in your job. You want to make money. That's your whole point, right? And so you don't want to wind up missing an opportunity because you're still so focused on all of the negative stuff, right? So when you're at work, the key is to focus on any opportunities that are coming up. all of the learning, all of the classes that you have to take, et cetera, so that you can get going with that rather than allowing all this other stuff to kind of get in the way of that, if that makes sense. So that's what I have for you. Moving on to Jenny, focuses on the mind and how the mind works and all the numbers that are in it, I'm sure. And the brain being brilliant as usual. Seeing as how I got an email from you at 8:30 at night the other day, or a text message or whatever it was, I don't know, because I'm over here and over there and everywhere too. I don't even remember what time it was, but I didn't realize that it was pretty late. And I'm like, this poor woman, here it is 8:30 at night and she's still doing taxes. And I had a moment of sympathy where I sent out a hug for you and a good job and a pat on the back and a you go girl, all in the same moment. Okay. Knowing that this is the reality, not now, but for the next month, because here we are at 3/14 today. We have a month from tomorrow before this is done. And while sometimes that could seem like, oh, it's just another month and then we're done, it probably feels like the longest month of your whole freaking life, and yet not enough time at the same time, which is kind of chaotic and crazy. And I think that the focus on the mind is at this time anyways, is kind of a good thing and not at the same time, because I don't feel like you're panicking about anything, and I don't feel necessarily like you're thinking, you got that the fear talk going on. But I do, again, and I know that I brought this up, I kind of feel like it's necessary with all of the chaos going on to take a minute and just breathe and just focus on your vacation when it's all done and how beautiful that's going to look, or meditate and go to the beach in your mind for a few minutes and just relax. This is going to help keep you focused. It's going to help keep you you'll be less likely to get emotionally overwhelmed. But also I feel like there's other ideas coming up that are not necessarily business related, and you do want to focus your energy on that, but you just don't have time. Make sure to write them down. It's very, very important to write them down so that you don't forget. And that helps to not have that chaos of you can't let it go because you're afraid you're going to forget it, kind of a thing. And then it gets jumbled up in there with all of those numbers, which can be chaotic and crazy as well. The other thing that's coming up is I feel like this week in particular, I keep seeing a wrench getting thrown in things. And this is like something that is unfortunately taking you away from focusing on your job. So this could have to do with the building. This could have to do with one of the kids. It's literally, I keep hearing, why now of all times do I have to deal with this? I am so overwhelmed with everything that's going on. And yet now I have to stop what I'm doing and deal with this BS. And it really does feel like, I remember when my kids were younger, even teenagers, and really being focused in the middle of something, just to have to take the time to deal with something that didn't even need to be a thing, but it is. And we are, even though the retrograde is ending at the end of this week, we are still in a shadow period. So it's kind of like, it's almost like, of course, we had one more week and we can't get through it unscathed, And I don't think that this is a big thing. This isn't a life-changing thing. This isn't annoying. I have to take time out of my day to deal with this thing. which is frustrating, but that's why we meditate and go to the beach. Because the beach never makes us feel like that. I've actually been seriously thinking that I need some beach time. And more importantly, seriously realizing that I have spent the majority of my time in the Bay Area, that close to the water again. And granted, the bay is right down the street from here. And I was at the airport where the bay is right there, and I can see the bay from my apartment. But I have not been to the ocean in all this time. You know, last 3 or 4 years, I spent the majority of my time here, and I have not been ocean bound, not once. It's an hour away. So I need to really make sure that that I make that time, because I just really, really, really need that space right now. The Empress in reverse. This is very interesting because this is, well, let me read the book first. In fact, this could be the annoyance that we're talking about here. The Empress in reverse, infertility or miscarriage. It could be an indication that the questioner is being overindulgent and maybe spending too much money, becoming wasteful, highly doubtful. I mean, anything's possible, but highly doubtful. On the other hand, if the questioner is a man, this could be for a woman too. This placing indicates that he or she has an over-possessive wife or mother who may stifle the progress if it doesn't get the situation in hand. So there's two things here. One, this could be from having an overbearing mother, but also I feel like this is a woman that is around you, and it feels like it sort of feels like this woman is a sabotager, and she keeps trying to sabotage something. Now, I don't think that this is within your job. I don't think that necessarily it has to do with work, but I feel like this could even be a woman in the community, or it could be if the problem comes up around one of your children, it could be a woman at school, okay? And this woman is she's just nasty, and I feel like there's no rhyme or reason to her need to constantly be a pain in your side, but she is. And instead of trying to figure out why, or even trying to bring her to your side, you got to fight back. I keep getting the words, you got to fight back. There's something about this situation where she's not going to go away unless you fight back. But fighting doesn't necessarily mean putting on your boxing gloves. In many cases, it means taking the higher ground and outsmarting this particular individual. And it won't take long. So that's what I have for you. When I get stuff like that, it makes me want to get in my car, drive up there, find the woman, rattle her cage, and walk away. That's what I have for you. Moving on to Matalyn. There's no planets in Virgo this week. Focus continues to be on the home because it's just still there. We're still focusing on the home, and it's kind of, in a way, a little bit frustrating. I feel like there's a certain situation that feels like you just can't change it. There's nothing you can do about it. You can't change it. You might even be thinking of ideas to change it, but Why? Because you just can't change it. It just keeps coming back to there's nothing I can do about this situation. Now, if this situation involves another person, you're right, there's nothing you can do. You can't make somebody else change their behavior, who they are, or whatever it is. It's impossible to do. If this is a situation that you're in and it's about your life, then yes, you can always change the situation. But it takes work. And this is where a lot of people get screwed up, is that they just don't want to put the time, energy, and work into it. They'd rather find an easy fix. And honey, I'm here to tell you that that does not exist. There is no such thing as an easy fix for anything. You have to work for it. Anybody that you meet that has a lot worked their butts off to get it. Granted, I can see where maybe it doesn't look like that. Okay, because your parents did not work their butts off to get that property. And your grandparents didn't work their butts off to get that property. Your great grandparents did. And your parents got to inherit it, and your parents will get to inherit it. And quite frankly, you will get to inherit it too. But that doesn't mean that your mom doesn't put a lot of work into that property. She does. She always has. Or that your grandfather didn't. And I remember what it was like to move into that property before you were born. So you want to be careful with how you perceive what other people have or have not done, because we look at that through our own experience and not the experience that they actually put into it, if that makes sense. Number one. Number two, I feel a very strong pull in this direction of life passing you by. You had your chance and it's gone. And I get that. We all sort of fall into that feeling every now and then. It's understandable. But you're far too young to think that it's over now, because it's not. You still have lots of time, lots of opportunities ahead of you. And this is a temporary feeling. This isn't a forever feeling. It doesn't have to be a forever feeling. It could be, but it doesn't have to be. Something interesting I remember with John, because this may be relevant to you as well. John grew up with parents that met in high school. Grandparents that met in high school. Great grandparents that were very young when they got married. David's grandmother was 16 years old when she got married. And so he just assumed, I guess, that that's how that worked, and found a girlfriend in high school and assumed that they would be together forever, because that's what happened with his parents and his grandparents and his great grandparents. And it didn't work. And it may not be just that that has gotten in the way of him forming relationships, but I think that it had it's almost like, even though he, I think, logically knows that he didn't fail, it almost does feel that way, I guess, if that makes sense. With that being said, just because the relationships that you've been in haven't worked yet doesn't necessarily mean that you fail at relationships. Just because you haven't followed in the footsteps of your parents or your grandparents doesn't mean that you fail in relationships. You have to keep an open mind because everybody's relationship schedule is different. Even if, I mean, you got to think in John's case, it was a fluke for his dad and I to still be together, and his grandparents, okay, and his great grandparents, okay. But those generations did that. They met young and they got married and they stayed with each other forever, whether they liked it or not, whether they liked each other or not. So a lot of that has to do with those generations. Your generation is different. They're changing everything. They're not having children. They're not getting married. They're not, settling down. They want freedom. They want to do what they want to do. They are a lot more creative, allowed to be a lot more creative than the generations ahead of them. I think that you're going through the change rather than failing because you're not sticking with what happened before, if that makes sense. And maybe if you see it in a different light, it might make more sense, or sense enough to where you're not being plagued by it, if that makes sense. The Hierophant is the card that I pulled for you. Now, Miss Wizard Lady over here, the Hierophant is the Pope. He's the shaman. He is the man that is closest to the voice of the deity, regardless of which deity you plan on speaking to at the time. Widen your breadth of vision, make up your own mind about which path you should take. Sometimes it does help to see others' point of view, and of course, learn by their mistakes. Okay. Most of the time, humans, they make the same mistakes as the people around, even though they don't like them. Okay. I grew up telling my mom, we're never going to smoke. That's disgusting and blah, 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 and this and that. And of course, I have for 35 years. So, obviously, you don't want to do that, right? Learning from their mistakes, learning and saying, this is not working for them. I'm going to do something different. Gives you a different power, makes things, changes your life, changes the direction of your life. And just because your parents didn't finish high school, go to college, do all this stuff, whatever, doesn't mean that you won't be successful doing it. If anything, it breaks a cycle and everything goes in a different direction. So that's what I have for you, darling. Moving on to Linda, focus continues to be on home. How dare those people not hire you? Number one, let's just get this shit off the table, okay? How dare those people not hire you? But at the same time, you probably didn't want that. As difficult as it is sometimes, because a lot of the time it's like, oh my God, yeah. So I really, really, really want this job. Even to force myself into this job only to find out that the job was a nightmare shit show and didn't really want it. So I will look at it in that way, that maybe this was a nightmare that you did not want to get yourself into, but there is another opportunity there as well. Not there, but you were looking at a different opportunity as well. Didn't get, also, just because you didn't get it doesn't mean that you're not going to get it either. I'm just going to put that on there. In any case, focus is on home. And I think You're tired of focusing on your home. There's nothing to focus on. You signed your lease. Everything is put where it's supposed to be. You have, everything sort of where it needs to be. You're tired of that focus. You want to focus on something different. I get it. It's time to open your laptop. I'm sure you have, but I don't think you quite are the way that you used to do so. It's time to open your laptop and really get acclimated with what you want to do and what you used to do. I think the writing thing has been put off long enough. Of course, I could say the same thing. Um, the universe always has a habit of clearing space for certain things. And so I don't know who this person is. And with that being said, the universe clearing that space is maybe making you stay home for a reason, because there are things that maybe you need to finish up that you haven't finished up yet. I think that's Bob's wife. Okay. There's also the possibility there that because I still see you getting that job, they may be creating a different position and you'll get a call back, if that makes sense. Mercury's retrograde is ending at the end of this week. We do have another shadow period afterwards, but I feel like even though I think that that's part of what this delay is, if that makes sense. Hard for you. I'm sorry, I'm distracted by people showing up here at the studio with children while there's a recording going on. But it's the boss's problem, not mine. That was not a good shuffle. Let's do that again. Card I'm pulling for you this week is Six of Wands in reverse. Which indicates defeat, shattered hopes, and loss. Again, you weren't defeated. I think, again, that your talents and your skills need to be used to their best advantage. And this particular position was not going to do that. So that's what I have for you. I'm going to take a little break and I'll be right back. Okay, moving on to Regina. Not feeling great today. Let's try to get through the rest of these. I can go home and play dead for the rest of the day. No planets in Scorpio this week, although the dark moon is back. She is back. And she is retrograde the whole time from the beginning to the end, coming in pretty much right at the beginning of the week, focusing her energy on two things: your day-to-day schedule as well as those you love. And again, with her need to make changes, this is kind of sort of simmering that down a little bit to where you're not necessarily trying to make changes as much as you are accepting what is. And acceptance is, God, it's the hardest lesson that we have as human beings. I mean, a lot of people say learning patience is difficult. I don't agree. I mean, I agree, but I think acceptance is harder. It's hard to accept things that you cannot change. It's hard to accept people and the things about people that you don't like. In my own marriage, it's been really hard to accept the fact that, my husband isn't always who I think he is. And maybe that's because who I think he is not who he is. And I go through a lot of opportunities to learn to accept that repeatedly in many cases. So I feel like it's almost like there's a panic that's going on in terms of what's going on, and that panic sort of forces us to want to force things to happen when we want it to, and to force these changes to make. And in the end, I think I don't know about you, but for me, in the end, I get so fed up and, use up so much energy trying to force the change that ultimately I wind up just surrendering to it. And that's usually when the acceptance happens, because there's nothing left. I have nothing left at that point but to accept the things that I cannot change. And a lot of times when I do that, that's when the change happens. And that's a very Mercury retrograde thing. It's a big Mercury retrograde lesson, because that's what the Mercury retrograde is all about, is teaching us that we don't have control over everything, and accepting that sort of makes us step out of the way to allow things to happen, if that makes sense. The card that I'm pulling for you is the Hermit. And I find that interesting because the Hermit is not stuck at home. He's choosing to hermitize for the greater good, for a bigger purpose, whether that's learning for a new job, certifications. I have a few certifications I have to knock out and get done today for my next new job. It's taking the time away in order to better yourself. So don't think of maybe the situation as being stuck at home. Think of it as an opportunity to grow, because that is exactly what it is. So that's what I have for you. Moving on to Theresa. We have the dark moon in Scorpio all week long, kicking off the week with the dark moon actually moving into Scorpio. And she's retrograde the entire time, focusing her energy on your day-to-day schedule a little bit at the beginning of the week, and those you love later on, towards the end of the week. What's sort of interesting about this is, I feel like for you, this is a reprioritization of your time, if that makes sense. Because I sort of feel this stepping out of yourself in order to focus your time on somebody else. And this could be family and what they're going through. But I also feel like this is exactly what you need, because it sort of feels like, in many ways, when we go through a grief cycle, we get very wrapped up in how we feel, which is normal. There's nothing bad about that. There's nothing wrong about that. It just is what it is. And then something sort of happens and comes up and yanks you out of that and puts you in this space where you realize that there's other people. And it sounds kind of selfish and self-centered, but it's not, you know. I don't think that we mean to be quote unquote selfish. I think that it's just something that happens, and it's that realization that something bigger needs your attention that helps to sort of pull us out of that a little bit, if that makes sense. I'll be there in just a minute if you need me. Huh? 80 for 4 hours. You have a calculator on your phone? I'll be there in just a minute. I'm being summoned. So I just went pulled right out of myself, just like that. See how that works? Or right out of what I'm doing. So I feel like that this is a good thing, you know, because a lot of the time you've always been very much, you know, all about your family and, you know, and what they're going through. And lately it's not that you haven't been, but maybe not as much. So this is kind of a good thing. And I think also it gives you something else to focus on besides what you're going through right now, which is also a good thing. The card that I'm going to pull for you here is the Two of Wands in reverse. And the Two of Wands in reverse indicates strong differences of opinion. This, first of all, Mercury is retrograde, so of course that's going to happen. But this could be why you're being pulled out of yourself for a bit, to kind of sort of come in and sort of smooth out things for somebody else, which again, it's a good turn of your focus a little bit, so that it's not necessarily, you're not stuck in that stagnant sort of feeling, if that makes sense. So that's what I have for you, and I will be right back. All right, moving on to Jelly Bean. Nothing going on in Scorpio, no planets in Scorpio this week except for the dark moon. She's back. She's back, but she's retrograde the whole time. Kicking off, moving into Scorpio right at the beginning of the week, all the way through the week. Retrograde the entire time. So she's not coming back with a vengeance. She's actually coming back to slow things down. And what's kind of interesting about this is Mercury's retrograde ends this week, right at the end of the week. And I've talked to a lot of people who've been talking about being like just really worn out, tired. And I'm thinking the Mercury retrograde might be causing some of that a little bit, where it's just this sort of, you know, kind of exhaustion. And I feel like the dark moon's retrograde is sort of doing that same thing for you, if that makes sense. It just sort of feels like you can't seem to get back on track, if that makes sense. Like you're just dragging, and that's okay. And I think that this week, I'm a firm believer that there are times when our energy is reflecting what our body needs. And sometimes our energy reflects that our body needs a rest like pronto. And therefore, I know that I go through this a lot, that there are just some days where I have a plan. There's all this, I just have all these things that I want to do. And I wake up that day and it's just like, no, I just don't think I can today. And so I don't, you know, I allow myself to rest. I give myself that reset because it's very, very important. And that's what I feel that the dark moon is doing for you this week. It's sort of forcing you into this reset period, if that makes sense. which is fine. Do what your body is telling you to do. The only time that that's a bad thing is if you are convincing yourself that your body is telling you to do this daily, every day, forever, and creating a lazy person that never gets up and does anything. That's not good. Okay. So you do have to kind of sort of push yourself through that. But a balance is always necessary. You've got to have balance of busy, balance of rest, balance of play, etc., etc. The Hermit in reverse. This is interesting because the Hermit in reverse is hermiting yourself. It is being introverted. It's like the world hates me and I'm just going to stay in my little hovel here. And there's two things that come up with that. One, sometimes that exhaustion does feel like that. That exhaustion comes with a tremendous amount of anxiety and anger and frustration. But also, it could be something that's happening that makes you feel like that kind of sort of throws you into this balance at all, or something happening in the frustration being overwhelming does wear you out. Either way, I do feel that there's a massive trigger behind this, and giving yourself time to work through that trigger is definitely a good idea. So that is what I have for you, darling. Moving on to Amber. No planets in Scorpio. Focus is on your day-to-day schedule, but the dark moon is coming into Scorpio, kicking off the week in Scorpio, spending the entire week in Scorpio, and the entirety of her time, she's retrograde. I'm so sorry. There are people right outside that door, like yelling at, they're not yelling at each other, they're talking, but they're talking like they're talking from mountainside to mountainside. So I apologize for all of that. Retrograde the entire time. So by the end of the week, her focus is on those you love rather than your day-to-day schedule. And her being retrograde, this is kind of interesting because there's two things that come with that. One, with her need for change, almost obsessive need for change in many ways. This is not about change. This is about leaving it alone. This is about leaving it the way it is and not trying to force a change in something or someone. And I really feel that this is around a specific situation and not necessarily a person, although it could be influenced by a person who just refuses to change, if that makes sense. That being said, and I feel like there's a lot of frustration around the fact that this change is not taking place. It's like, this is what you want, you're not getting it. It's frustrating. But the hardest thing in the world is acceptance, accepting what cannot be changed, accepting the situation for what it is, or the person for what it is, rather than trying to force a change, if that makes sense. The other funny, really haha weird thing is that once you actually succumb to the acceptance, the change happens. It's like you get out of the way and allow the change to take place, because while you're in the middle of it trying to micromanage it, it just doesn't work. It's absolutely will not work. And we wind up causing so much frustration and utilizing so much energy being frustrated and trying to micromanage something. But it's like micromanaging a bunch of rocks that are in a pile, and you're standing there and you're yelling at them and you're like, for God's sakes, make a circle already. But the rocks aren't doing anything. It sounds silly, but most of the time, that's what we're doing when we're trying to force a situation to happen in the timing and in the way that we want it to happen, if that makes sense. The other thing that I'm picking up is that I feel like there's sort of an element of around a person that there is hope that maybe this person's finally getting it, and then all of a sudden it slams down and you realize that this person hasn't changed at all. Boy, do we not go through that often. I don't know why I haven't learned my lesson yet. I don't know why I haven't learned my lesson yet on that one, because it always it's like being stuck in the same wheel, a hamster wheel, over and over and over again. Where I get my hopes up and then they get dashed, you know. And that's kind of what I feel coming from around you, is getting your hopes up and then they get dashed. Always have a backup plan. Always have a backup plan. It's the smart thing to do. And your backup plan is magic. This is the magician. The magician doesn't think about making magic. He just makes it. He doesn't have to think about it. In fact, the more he thinks about it, the more he freaks himself out, the less magic is going to come out. Things just resolve themselves like magic when we get out of the way and let them do that. And that's what it comes down to. That's what you have to remember. The less control you have over the situation, the more successfully the situation can mold into what it's supposed to be. The more we try to control the situation, the less the situation is going to budge. And that is absolutely 100% true of any situation, person, place, or thing. So that is what I have for you. Moving on to Kailin, we do not have any planets in Scorpio this week. The dark moon is coming into Scorpio this week, kicking off the week, moving back into Scorpio, and spending the entirety of the week in Scorpio, retrograde the entire time. Focus begins very early on, focused on your day-to-day schedule, but moves into focus on those you love pretty quickly. Now, there's a couple of things I feel that are coming up around this situation, specifically around people that you love. And two things. One, being as empathic as you are. People and what they're going through, it's like heartbreaking. I mean, I can feel it, and you look and you see what these people are going through and you go, I just want to help make that easier for them. And I know I can, and I know you can too. And unfortunately, as humans, we interpret helping people usually in the wrong way. See, empathy is one of those things where we can feel what somebody's going through, or we can hear in our minds what somebody is going through, pick up their thought processes, feel that the sadness and the anger and the panic and the anxiousness, and we don't want to feel that. So we tend to interpret that as, if I fix this for them, I won't have to feel that anymore. That's a trap. And it's a trap that every single empath falls into. Because when we do that, then what happens? They get into a jam again. We're feeling that anxiousness again. What do? We jump up and fix it for them. And it's a vicious cycle. Before the end is over with this situation, we are constantly fixing things for this person now. They're not fixing them for themselves. They're not actively taking part in their own lives. They are handing it over to somebody else. And if it's not you, it will be somebody else. Empathy, it doesn't take that much work. We'll put it that way. When we feel anxiousness from somebody because they're having a tough time making a decision, the best thing that we can do is ask their guides to help them make the decision, to give them clear sight to make the decision. We can make suggestions, but we should not be getting our hands dirty, okay? Not because we want to protect ourselves, but because it's best for you and for the person involved. If we don't do the work in our own lessons, we never learn them. And empaths, unfortunately, and I've been in this situation multiple times, right? Empaths always, it's like the curse of being an empath is that you're constantly martyring yourself for other people just so that you can try and manage what it is that you're picking up. I think I sent you that ground and bubble video. Use it. Use it all the time. I know I did because we talked about you working at a bar and you needing to do that. Use it, use it, use it, use it. You can't overuse it, okay? That's how you manage not picking up what's going on with other people. And you got to use it the most around the people that you're closest to because you're going to pick up the most from them because you're so close to them. One thing I don't think I told you when we talked, and this is why this is very, very important, okay? When my husband and I have been together for 31 years this year, so we've been through a lot together, including the loss of both of his grandparents, who were like my own grandparents, and I loved them dearly. When his grandfather passed, I my mentor kept telling me and telling me and telling me, you have to ground and bubble around him. And my mind was just like, that is so disloyal. It's like I'm shutting him out. I can't do that. So when his grandfather passed away, I did put my bubble up, but I brought him into mine. And the result of that was a full day of seeing this little boy just sobbing for his grandfather the whole time. I mean, it was so incredibly draining. It was so sad. There's no way that I can fix it. And I made myself sick in the process. I couldn't even help him with anything that day. He had to wind up taking care of me on top of everything else that he was already going through because I had made myself sick. Refusing to let go of what he was feeling. And that's one reason why you ground and bubble around the people that you love. The other reason is, of course, it's none of your business, right? So when his grandmother passed several years later, I learned my lesson and I dealt with my own grief. I allowed him to deal with his own grief. It worked out a lot easier that way. The card that I'm pulling for you today is the Six of Swords. He sees land and he's almost there. And sometimes that seems like the longest part of the journey for sure. The Six of Swords in this position indicates stress and pressure, but there's an optimistic outlook. To me, this card is all about work. When you're working towards something, there's always stress and pressure, but that stress and pressure is a good thing. It's necessary to get where you need to go, right? So that is what I have for you. Moving on to Peg. It's a wild card week because there really is, Sagittarius is in between focuses right now. There's really not a whole lot to focus on. Dark Moon has moved out. She's in Scorpio. She'll be back, trust me. But in the meantime, what a great way to end the Mercury retrograde this week by not having anything specific to focus on. It's a time for you to focus on what you want to focus on. what you've been putting off for a while, what you feel you need to focus on right now without any interruptions, which is really, really nice when that happens. You'd think I'd been drinking every week. Mm, mm. One thing that's coming up, I know this has come up for you before. And so I always feel like I'm repeating myself because I know this has come up for you before. There's a closet. It seems ridiculous because you just moved there, but it seems like the closet just needs to be organized. There's something, and it could also be because you're looking for something specific and you don't remember where you put it. And in order to find it, you got to take everything out of this closet and reorganize it anyways. I do see the potential of something along those lines coming up this week. But also the organization period. I feel like this organization is actually happening for a reason, that you're preparing for something and you're being given this time to prepare before things start to take off, whatever that thing is. So, and I always find that when I'm looking for something and I can't find it, there's always an opportunity there because, I wind up, of course, focusing on something else or cleaning or reorganizing something that wasn't organized correctly, when because I know that there's a few spots and closets, where I didn't really organize anything. It's just, where do you put all this stuff? I'm going to put it in here. But there is an opportunity there to find something else. It's just like you're missing something, you can't find it, you're looking, but you wind up finding something else. And that sparks something in your brain about something that you've been wanting to work on for a while that you just haven't had time for. And this sort of brings it to the surface, if that makes any sense at all. While, of course, creating an opportunity to organize, if you choose to use it, of course. I like things organized too. In fact, the older I get, the more I need that structure in my life. When I was younger, I didn't need organization. I knew where everything was in the mess that was my life. I knew where everything was. These days, I don't know what it is. It's like I've got an OCD about it. It's very strange. Okay, the card that I'm pulling for you this week is the Eight of Swords. And hopefully that's not you freezing in the snow still, because I know that it was getting a lot of snow over there back east. Eight of Swords in this position, trouble in health, wealth, or emotional happiness with a tendency to make matters worse than they are. This is a lot of times about panicking over things before we realize, before we know for sure whether we should be panicking or not. I kind of take this as, freaking out more than we need to before we find out the facts. But also, I feel like part of what is coming up around this card is, I wouldn't say trouble with health, wealth, and happiness. There's this frustration, okay? I don't see any health issues. I don't see necessarily money issues outside of the normal ones. There's a tremendous amount of frustration. And I'm not sure where that frustration is coming from, but this time to organize sort of takes your mind off of that, if that makes sense, which you kind of need a break from, honestly. I don't think the source of the frustration is gone or will be gone. I just think that giving yourself a break from it every now and then is definitely a good thing. So that is what I have for you. And finally, we get to Mama Sherri. No planets in Sagittarius. Sagittarius is in between focuses at this time. It is a wild card week. You get to choose what you want to focus on. Now, I hope you feel much, much better, by the way, because I know you were sick last week. And I also saw about a couple of days ago that you said you were feeling better. So it lasted a while. So this week is a good opportunity to keep resting. I know you have a ton of energy, and I know that I'm sure you've been sick for a week and there's a lint on your floor. And oh my God, the house is a mess. I get it. I'm starting to turn into you, by the way. I just want you to know that I am starting to turn into you. And if I see one little thing on the floor, I freak out. Okay. And I have to remind myself some days when it's just been too much that I'm not you, I'm me. And it's okay if that thing is on the floor until tomorrow. Okay. Because I have a lot going on and I can't obsess over stuff like that. But I do like things to be neat and clean and orderly and organized as much as possible. It just makes things a lot easier. But I do see rest. The dark moon is not in Sagittarius this week, moved on to Scorpio. So you have this sort of time to just kind of choose what you want to focus on, if anything, which is nice. I think at times we don't get this to have this situation often. So when it does come up, we really do need to utilize it, because if we don't utilize it, we waste it, and we don't want to do that. The Nine of Pentacles is the card that I pulled for you today. Pentacles oftentimes are associated with money. Nine of Pentacles indicates fondness for luxury and the comforts of home, financial and emotional security, which I'm going to take as money coming in. So if you want to utilize some of that time making some extra money, I would not say no. I would just say to make sure that you don't overbook yourself, and give yourself plenty of space in between those readings to make sure that you have some Sherri time. So that is what I have for you. That is what I have for everybody. I will see you guys next week. Make it a great one.